Serious. People who suddenly came into a lot of money. What was your horror story of people begging for money? Story 1. So I knew this girl who was an intercourse worker, had known her for years, and we had even briefly dated before she got into that line of work. She was always really open about what she was doing and that she enjoyed it, which I believe because this woman was a freak, in a good way. In fact, one of the reasons things hadn't worked out was that she was way too kinky for me, and I'm pretty open-minded. She always explained it to me like this: I would be a total S either way, so why not get paid for it and not have to work? Fair enough, I didn't question it. Fast forward like 10 years and I had inherited a bunch of money, not like obscenely wealthy, but enough to really change my lifestyle. And I still talk to my friend regularly even though we live in different parts of the country. She was one of the few people who was there for me consistently through some really dark times. And I was there for her in the same way, and I really valued her friendship. She started talking about how she wasn't young anymore and she wasn't happy anymore doing what she was doing and wanted to change directions. You can probably guess where this was going. She had a plan that seemed pretty good. I was also in the midst of intentionally drinking myself to death, and I was pretty sure I was going to die soon. I came very close. So I didn't really care about money. I ended up giving her $10,000 that she needed to go back to school. Not a loan, just gave it to her. That really sucks. I'm sorry you lost your relationship with her. What a crappy thing to do. I'm not entirely sure I get the comment on that story, or how this is a horror story, aside from the place in life the OP was in. It sounds like he gave her some money to help her out. Am I missing something here? Story 2. So a few years out of college, my girlfriend and I were living in a sort of large communal apartment with 5 other people. 2 bedrooms, 2 couches in the common area. I had just gotten a significant promotion at my job, and that situation was exceptionally below my means, but my girlfriend was convinced that these were her people and they were all going to become great philosophy writers and poets by living together and sharing experiences. They were all unemployed or underemployed and experienced moochers, so I was very careful not to let them know I was saving large sums of money with the intent of moving out soon and taking my girlfriend with me or not. One day, the other couple had an argument about rent, and to try to keep them from coming to blows, my girlfriend promised them that I'd cover it for them and showed them one of my pay stubs, which I guess they showed everyone else. I got home from work and walked right into an apartment meeting ambush where everyone else informed me that they wanted me to contribute more meaningfully, and they'd put it to a vote before I got back. I told them that I was already paying for their food that they kept guilting my girlfriend into buying for them, topping up the apartment emergency fund instead of stealing from it like the rest of them, and many other things, and that I wasn't going to cover other people's rent as well. The next day, when I was at work, someone went into my room and destroyed my laptop, which was the only thing of value I owned at the time. I collected the few things I wanted to take, told my girlfriend I was breaking up with her, and walked out. The next day when I was at work, someone went into my room and destroyed my laptop. Brilliant move. That was bound to convince you to spend more money on them. Sounds like that communal living situation of artists and poets was actually a commune of complete moochers who were taking advantage of whomever they could. I'm all for bohemian communal living, but that situation sucks. Story 3. My grandma died a week before Christmas, and she left her house and a quarter of her small fortune to me. The rest of the money went to my brother and my 2 cousins. My uncles and aunts have been a pain in my back ever since, claiming that the money/house are theirs, etc. And I've also been approached by people who I haven't seen or talked to in a while. Even my ex, who dumped me for some douchebag rugby player, started talking to me again and invited me to places. And she's still dating the same guy. Anyway, I'm not naive enough to lend those people money or even befriend them. Luckily, I have good friends and my brother as advisors. If you got a quarter and there are 4 cousins, including you and your brother, why do they think they deserve more? Sounds even to me. F that be. Story 4. I can't give an answer, although it's developing at this stage. All throughout school, I was a bit of a loser, didn't do well in class, and never really cared. I used to go out all the time with my friends and would hang out with them all the time. At school, I didn't do much other than waste time until I found my wife and wanted to start being better for her. I did a 1-year software development course and then got a pretty crappy job making almost nothing in my country, South Africa. When my wife got pregnant, all my friends basically ghosted me as I wasn't going to be going out partying with them anymore. They wouldn't return my texts or even answer my calls. A few years down the line, I landed a very high-paying remote job, $200,000 for a San Francisco-based company. The average salary for a software developer in South Africa is around $30,000 per year. My wife was very proud of me, I think, and posted a picture of me on her Facebook standing next to my new car that I had just bought. There was one guy I always had a soft spot for and decided that I would have dinner with him and see how the last 4 years of life had treated him. We hadn't even ordered our food yet when he dropped the bomb on me that he felt that I owed him a lot of money for always being there for me and that I would be selfish to not give him some money as I had so much. I quietly got up and left. I eventually changed my number and deactivated my social media accounts, but people still harass my wife and mother to try and get some money out of me. This doesn't even go into the absolute crap I had coming from my dad's side of the family, who are basically hillbillies. I'm curious about the hillbillies. That really sucks, and honestly, it really makes me feel bad for you to have a friend come right at you like that. You always hear about how money changes relationships with people, but you don't expect it to be that overt. Story 5. My mom has this ugly football-themed van. Ever since I was 10, I would go around in circles about how it will be mine one day. But I told her from the start I'll pass. I hate vans. And football. Bought a different car and the van broke down after she put over 300,000 miles on it. I get my first income tax, which was almost $3,000, and she tried to sell me the van for $2,000. I tell her no, and she drops it to $1,000 since I can easily afford it. I still refuse, and less than an hour later she sends me a picture of a $12,000 dog for sale with, "This is what I want for my birthday. He's in Kentucky. I'll send you the address." She wanted to use my money to get a dog and was hoping to be sneaky and trick me into buying a broken, ugly van to fund her multi-state trip to pick up her dream dog. She didn't speak to me for months after and still tries to sell me that POS for more than it was worth when it ran. Not that you should spend anything on her, but I heard you like vans and dogs, so I got you this van. Story 6. I got a $7,000 settlement from a car accident. I accidentally left the check on the corner table in the living room. My dad walks into my bedroom and asks if I can lend my mom any money. I work minimum wage retail and ask him how much she needs. He says, "How about half of that $7K check?" It has been almost 8 years. I haven't seen any of that money back. I think you already know what I'm about to say, but you will probably never see any of that money back. When parents borrow money from children, I think in the back of their mind, they sort of see it as payment for all the money they spent on you growing up. At least I think that's how they justify it. Edit. Sorry for the confusion. I shouldn't have wrote this in a way that makes it seem like all the parents feel this way. What's crazy is I grew up in a very poor family. And when my parents borrowed money, they always tried to make sure and pay it back when they could, so why I worded it that way, I don't know. I guess I was just focused on that one person's comment. I apologize. I no longer loan family members or friends money. If I can, I just give them the money and say, hey, if I need help one day and you can help, great. Otherwise, it's a gift. I realize it sounds like I'm privileged to be able to do that, but I was doing that when I could barely scrape by because I'm bad with money. Story 7. Not sure if it really fits as we never actually received the money in the end and I'm not too clued in on the details, but anyway, about 10 years ago or so, my grandfather called my mother one day exclaiming that he'd finally netted in excess of £1 million worth of property. A big deal for my family. Of course, he wasn't doing anything with it. He was always a frugal man and remained that way until the day he died. As the years went on, his health deteriorated in more ways than one, progressing to the point where he needed to have full-time care and ultimately ended up being put in a home. Now, we currently live in Australia. My family is mostly still in the UK. My aunt who still lives there was responsible for sorting out all of his needs. Time went on and sadly he ended up passing away. As all of this was happening, she was looking into his financial details and his will and whatnot. What was peculiar was that in his state of dementia, he had apparently at some point closed all of his bank accounts and withdrawn any money in cash. How? I don't know, but as a result of that, what with all the costs of supplying care to him and in his home and whatnot, the banks believed that we had hidden the money somewhere and refused to help. Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 8. Not exactly a horror story, but I've always made more money than most of my friends. Some of them would hit me up for cash, but usually I only agreed to small amounts or said no. I did, however, have a very close friend who I really enjoyed the time we spent, but we liked to drink, so bars were a go-to hangout. I usually ended up paying for the entire night to the point where he said he wasn't comfortable hanging out because he never had the money. But I genuinely did like just hanging, and he always bought the first round. That's respect. Respect for true homies. He obviously enjoyed your company too to not have felt good about you financing every outing. It means he cared about your well-being. Dope. There are times, even when you are clearly the person with a lot more money, that you let the friend with less money do stuff for you. It's a sign of respect, and it makes them feel good. I say this as the person who was often the poorer friend. Story 9. So I wouldn't consider it a lot of money, but I won $5,000 on a scratch-off that was given to me on my birthday by my aunt. It was just a $2 scratcher, and obviously nobody thought I would win that much. I scratched it in front of everyone, and they were all super excited for me, except my aunt, who demanded the ticket back because she paid for it. I even offered to split half with her. Long story short, she took me to small claims where the judge pretty much laughed and she didn't get crap. Haven't talked to her since. I even offered to split it with her. Wow, that's really generous, and it sounds like she still insisted on taking it all? What a piece of crap! Story 10. I once took second in a poker tournament and won $150,000. There was an audience of about 200 people when it finished. Common practice was people asking winners for a lucky chip. I was almost mobbed by people begging for lucky chips as I left the casino. Had to be escorted by security and paid a friend $300 to follow me in their car, and we drove all over town for 2 hours to make sure nobody was following me home. Wouldn't have thought of the driving part. That's pretty smart. God knows what kind of desperation lives at the fringes of those events. Story 11. I unexpectedly inherited about 4 years' worth of take-home pay. Before I knew how much it would be, I told my best friend I'd be getting a few $1,000s. She immediately asked me to take her on a trip to Europe. That was the biggest thing she asked for, but she made other small requests as well. When the money came through and it was a lot more than I'd anticipated, I did not tell my friend. Instead, I started distancing myself from her. I also did not tell any of my other friends. I did tell my boyfriend. He did not ask for anything. I took him on a trip to Europe. Edit. Wow, my first gold. Yes, this is the best story. Yeah, I'm sorry. If a friend tells you that they just came into some money and you ask for anything, you just failed the friendship test. Now, like, if you've been paying for stuff for them for years and years, and they never return that favor once they have that money, you still don't ask, but then you know that they failed the friendship test. God, money makes things suck, huh? Story 12. I inherited my beloved grandma's house alongside some other properties. As the house and the properties are near a very rapidly developing city, prices have skyrocketed and led to me inheriting about $1.5 million in value. That may sound awesome at first, but it truly isn't. The house is a very old brick house built in the late 1700s, and the properties are so small and widely distributed, I can't really sell them for a good price. As the house is a listed historical building, every little repair has to be done by state-approved professionals for restoration and conservation of old buildings, which basically doubles if not even triples the cost. I rented it out, but the rent I get is barely enough to cover the costs of repairs, insurance, etc. I'm lucky if I get even by the end of the year. But as this house is where my family used to live for the last 4 generations before my dad bought the ranch and moved there with my mom, I want to keep it in the family as long as possible. I've now learned who to trust and to spot telltale signs of vultures. Don't let an old house control your life. The amount of time and money you spend on it will leave you worn out. The first log cabin on our farm was built in 1780. By the time I sold it, it was a 15-room farmhouse with 5 outbuildings. I sold in 2006 and was able to take early retirement 10 years later. Had I kept the place, I would have had to work well into my 70s. Loved the place, but just not that much. Gonna have to agree, doesn't seem like the house even really is that important to keeping your family if you're just renting it out. Use that money to make your family happier or to plan for the future. Story 13. Old friend would only want to meet on the condition that we go out to eat and that I pay for it. I wouldn't call them friends, my friend. Story 14. Before the recession hit, my dad had a pretty lucrative small business and we lived comfortable middle-class lives. He would often lend his family money since most of his sisters didn't amount to much in their lives. They would never pay him back. and often hassle him to give them money since he was so well off. After the recession hit, we took a big dive and were still able to live okay, but had to sell a lot. No more insurance and basically lived paycheck to paycheck while my dad worked 7 days a week to make ends meet. After all he's done over the years, not one of them would help when we needed it. One of my uncles has even been more well off with a car dealership and refused to aid my father with a loan, even though my father always pays his debts regardless of if others do the same. None of his sisters have ever repaid a cent of his generosity. I have a lot of terrible stories about them through the years, and finally he's cut them all out of his life after almost losing my mom through divorce last year, partly because of his horrid family and how they treated her, and nearly drinking himself to death the past 3 years. They are truly terrible, greedy people, and it's all taught me a lot about the kind of person I want to be and who I want to surround myself with. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.